Welcome, everyone, to the Lansing Catholic Podcast. On the show today is Mr. Dan Spitzley. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Father. It is great to be here.
You have been teaching here for a long time. How many years?
19 years now.
Let's see, how old was I 19 years ago? I would have been, do you want to know?
You know, I don't. I when I interact with you every day, I kind of, at least in my mind, think we're about the same age.
We're peers.
Don't destroy that for me, Father.
Okay, well, I won't tell you how old I was 19 years ago. But yeah, that's a little while. You've certainly seen a lot of things. You've seen a lot of chaplains come and go. So when you started, would that have been Father Joe Krupp?
That was Father Joe Krupp for my first few years, yes.
Yes, the other Joe. He also has a podcast. I don't know if you have listened to his. It's called, and he also had a column in the Faith magazine that was called Father Joe in the Know.
Right, he's done very well on the social platforms.
Yes, so somebody was saying we should retitle this podcast to like sort of play off of that one and see if anyone notices it's a different Father Joe. They probably would, especially if they saw me in person. My beard is way less impressive than his.
It is an impressive beard he carries these days.
So Father Joe Krupp, Father Gordon, Father Paul, and now me.
Yes.
What else have you observed, or what else has changed at the school over the years? A couple of different presidents and principals.
Oh my goodness! That's a hard list to start to go down. I mean, just the exterior of the school, all of the improvements. I mean, the chapel, just the changes in leadership. My goodness! Sometimes I walk around and I just think, you know, how many people here even have like the memory I do, and it doesn't even seem like I've been here that long. But then I look down the halls and I'm like, oh, there's only like 4 or 5 people who've been here this long still.
Yep.
So that's kind of a weird feeling, but so many good things, so many improvements to the school.
And you've been teaching theology this whole time, right?
I have. My first 2 years was with the sophomores, and then I moved to senior year, so I got those first 2 classes twice. And then it's been senior theology since. And
you also teach philosophy. When did that get added in?
Yeah, so that's before my time. I think it was a Mr. Dulles, who kind of created that class. And so that was going for the seniors before I was here. But such a cool class he created, and just so awesome to get to teach it. Yeah.
I enjoyed last year. I came and gave a presentation on my. I studied philosophy in college, as all seminarians do, and I won an award for an essay. I won 3rd place in the philosophy essay contest, and the essay was on McTaggart and the philosophy of time. And at the time, that's not meant to be a pun. Back then in college, I didn't think I was going to win an award. I just submitted. I was like, whatever, I'll just throw it in. It was my term paper for metaphysics, so I took my name off of it and switched a few things like you had to submit it. And then I won 3rd place. And I was like, oh, great. I think I got like $100 or something. What I didn't know is that by winning, you were expected to then present your essay to the entire philosophy department and whatever students wanted to show up. And I basically just chickened out and didn't want to do that. So I don't remember what I told them. I think I just said like, no, I'm just not going to do that. And somehow that got translated within the philosophy department to me being out of town or out of the country or something. So they did the presentation. The 1st and 2nd place winners presented. They were also seminarians. Actually, one of them wasn't, but. And then they said after that, like, yeah, we also have the 3rd place winner, Joe Campbell, but he's currently studying abroad in Rome and wasn't able to be here today. Well, all the seminarians there were looking at each other like, no, he's not. He's like over in the seminary right now. I just saw him. So that was a little embarrassing. One of those things I look back on like, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. I should have just given the presentation. Well, last year in your philosophy class, I finally presented my essay to your students and felt like I was making up for that all those years ago.
Yeah, every year we read from Book 11 of St. Augustine's Confessions, where he talks about the philosophy of time and eternity and how that affects our understanding of God's unchanging nature, which has so many cool impacts on different areas of Christian belief that God doesn't change. So when I discovered your award-winning paper on the philosophy of time, we had to bring that in. So
yes. Now, what is the philosophical conundrum of like the ship and it's going across the sea and they're replacing parts And over time, every single part of the ship has been replaced. And you ask, is it still the same ship by then? What is that called? I forget.
I don't know the technical name for it, but it's a really interesting question as to what makes a thing what it is.
Right. Well, it made me think about that in terms of the school, because you've been here for long enough that a lot of things have changed, including leadership, teachers, parts of the building. At what point is it still the same school, or is it a different school? Like, how do you...
Well, we've always had the same mission, so that's been the same all the way through. So even if every block gets taken down and replaced, that's going to be who we are.
Now, you have helped out with lots of retreats over the years. At least while I've been here, you were one of the key speakers for the Kairos retreats. What else have you been involved with for the retreats?
Yeah, so my first Kairos was, I think, in the spring of 2007. And back then, we used to do those twice a year. So I accumulated quite a few Kairoses over the years. I think I stopped counting in the mid-20s somewhere. But we also used to do day retreats with all of the grade levels that I would get to be a part of. And then we also used to do retreats based on house. A few different forms of retreats over the years.
Yeah, I've seen some of those. I certainly was involved in the Kairos retreats over the last couple of years, as well as the day retreats. And we also did a few house retreats. And there has been a lot of kind of shifting over the last couple of years in the retreat programming. So I'm sure a lot of our parents are probably aware of this, but in case you aren't, what has sort of shifted is at this point, we take all of our students to Damascus for the big retreat experience of the year. It used to be that your required retreat was just a day retreat. And if you wanted to, you could do Kairos. But a lot of students, all they basically would do was the day retreat. And something that I had observed and others on the campus ministry team was that it didn't seem like the day retreat was really having much of an impact. And it's hard to do much with just one day, right? We would come to school and then bus over to St. Therese here in Lansing. And you only had about 6 hours to work with when you factor in the busing time and all that. So we'd have, a few talks, a few games, adoration, but it was just very brief and hard to really kind of make a dent, so to speak. So over the last couple of years, we've started to partner more with Damascus. We tried, our first ever trip was, I think, my second year here. So that would have been our current juniors when they were freshmen. We took the whole class down there. And that was sort of like an experimental, we'll see how this goes. And it went really well. The students really loved it. It seemed like it really did have a big impact on them. So then we started looking into, well, how can we bring more of our students to this? And something that's nice about working at a school, I've observed, is every year you have a fresh batch of students that comes through. And so it's easy to kind of like bring change into a school by just sort of ushering it in 1 year at a time as these students move along, because it doesn't, it's not like a drastic change because they don't really know any different. Like they're just going with the program. It was not like that at the parish. I noticed at the parish, anytime you changed anything, like it was a big ordeal because there are a lot of people that are just very rooted and have been there for decades. Sure. So anyways, we have sort of made this transition over the last few years away from just day retreats and now to a full-on big retreat experience for everyone. And this year was the first year we'd done it for every single student. We just a few weeks ago got back from the upperclassmen retreat, which you were on.
I was.
As one of the staff members. So that's kind of like the primary retreat experience now for all the students is to just go on Damascus. How have you seen, in your own observation, like the retreat programming shift over the years?
Wow. That's a great question. When I first started, Kairos was very much kind of optional and in addition to those day retreats. And that kind of shifted a little bit over time. At times it would become, there was more of a requirement associated with it. Then we went back to optional. But I think you're absolutely right that those day retreats, there's only so much you can do. Yeah. Just the limitation of time and the students know it's going to be over at, we got to get back by the end of the school day.
Right.
And so you end up, not having every kid really get that full opportunity. And so I think one of the great things about the shift we have here is, the kids have that multi-day experience. Right. And, I mean, Damascus just has incredible resources. Right. That, we've always done the best we can, especially with the Kairos retreat. Yeah. I think we've put on some great Kairos retreats over the years. Yeah. But in terms of reaching every kid to offer them that encounter experience, it's just tough to compete with what Damascus has to offer.
Right. I mean, they're basically professional retreat givers. Right. They literally do this all year long, and they're young adults, so they're kind of close to their age, but old enough to be able to pull off something like this in a very effective and powerful way. And we just show up and do our little retreat and then leave. But I often think, like, the day we are leaving, they are already flipping this camp around and getting ready to do another retreat that night. Like, they're just this very well-oiled machine, like bumping through these retreats all year long. So, yeah, after we started partnering with them and I began to see what they were doing down there in Ohio, I was like, this is so good. And I just don't see why we wouldn't take advantage of this. And then also when I became more involved in just the administrative side of these retreats, I was also beginning to see that they're actually cheaper than our own Kairos retreat was. Like, we were spending more money doing this ourselves once you factor in the staying overnight at the retreat center and the meals and all the things. Because all of those missionaries, part of their whole philosophy of doing this is that they fundraise their own salary. Wow. So anything that they are providing for, they're able to do it at a lower cost because a lot of those missionaries they're not getting paid necessarily by Damascus. Like, they're just fundraising and finding people to support them financially so that they can do these retreats in a powerful way at a more affordable cost.
And their laser tag guns were just way better than ours.
Yeah, yes, that was fun. I used to love laser tag, but then I started playing paintball. And once you get to that level, it's just so much more intense. Like, the adrenaline rush of sprinting across a field and diving behind a bunker and then having all these paintballs like slam against the steel corrugated. Like, it's so loud and terrifying. It's like, whoa, I'm going to die.
There needs to be a little consequence, right?
Yeah.
Not just like a flashing red light.
Yeah.
I want at least something to let me pay a price for running through like an idiot.
Yes. I used to play a lot of airsoft in high school, and my brother Peter had this fully automatic airsoft gun that hurt so bad. It would leave welts that would bleed. So I never wanted to be against him because then I'd get shot by him. I always wanted to be on his team, so at least you're shooting all the other people and not me.
When each of my kids have we've gotten them airsoft guns, and when they get their first one, I take them out to our woods and I say, all right, we're going to go back to back, and we're going to do 5 paces, turn and shoot at each other. And I always turn at the second pace and shoot him in the back. I'm like, all right, there's your first lesson. You don't trust anyone in an airsoft game.
Teaching them the rough lessons of life.
That's right.
So what was it like being at the Damascus retreat with the students? Because we weren't running it. We were just there kind of observing and then also doing our own little retreat track sort of on the side. So how was that for you?
Yeah, it was really interesting. When you're putting on the retreat, you're always thinking, like, what's the next thing? And, I've got to give this talk in like a day and I haven't prepared like maybe I should have, right? And so there's all those other added stresses, but just the freedom of being there, knowing, someone is doing all of the logistics and just kind of going through the experience with them, I thought was really cool. And just lets you enter more into the worship and all those other aspects.
Yeah, and it was nice to be able to do some of the high adventure activities that the students were doing. We did the high ropes course,
right,
which was pretty cold since it was February, but that was fun. And then you mentioned the laser tag. That was also
that was a lot of fun. Well, can I share a brief funny story?
Oh, sure.
So you mentioned, we kind of got to be there with the kids. So I think it was the last night after adoration, we did some kind of prayer ministry where we're praying over each other. And so one of the things that I asked to be prayed for, and this was really kind of an inspiration of the missionaries there, was just for a new boldness, because I was, watching these young people and like, man, when I was their age, would I have been so confident, so even with the us older people who were there, I mean, these missionaries knew their stuff and just boldly proclaimed Jesus. And like, man, I would not have been like that. So I asked, can you pray for me for just a new sense of boldness? And even as I said it and people were praying over me, I'm like, man, what did you ask for? You know that you're going to get some opportunity, to be bold. And what are you getting yourself into? And so they pray for me. And literally on the bus ride home, I get a text from my wife. It says, hey, our parish is putting on a retreat for engaged couples, and they want us to give a talk on marital intimacy. I'm like, Jesus, are you kidding? Like, marital intimacy? That was not the kind of boldness I was thinking of. Really? I'm like, all right, Jesus. Like, I told my wife, Melissa, if you want to do it, I'll do it, because I guess I just prayed for this.
I'm thinking of all kinds of Fowler jokes I could make right now, but I'm going to restrain myself. So Dan is from Fowler, Michigan, which is like an old school country German Catholic community.
Yes.
I assume this is not something that's necessarily like freely spoken about all that much.
I would assume not, at least not by me ever. So that's going to be a new topic. We're working on the talk. We got a couple weeks yet, but not the boldness I was looking for. Yeah.
Well, certainly an important topic to be talked about, because it's being talked about in all kinds of ways in our culture, which
that's true,
are not necessarily very helpful. So
yeah.
I'm planning later on this year, we're going to do that session in your class about marriage.
Oh, yeah.
Which for me will be more of like the practical side of, okay, let's say you get engaged someday and you want to get married. How does that how does it work? Like, when do you go talk to the priest? Do you go to get your venue? And because I did a lot of weddings in my first parish assignment, and it was interesting to see just the logistics of all that. And there are like a few things that you should be aware of, because if you, for example, rent your reception venue first and then don't talk to the priest for months until you finally feel like contacting the parish, not realizing there's like this 9-month minimum time of prep, it can cause problems with your timeline. So,
and that fits well in the class, because we by that point in the class, we're talking about St. John Paul II's anthropology is kind of the culmination and tie together of everything we've done. So having that marriage conversation is perfect.
That'll be good. Yeah, it's certainly something I kind of miss. At the parish, I did a lot of weddings. Obviously, I'm not doing those here. But I hear from other chaplains that about 5 years after you've been done at the high school, then you start doing all these weddings of former students. There
you go. That'll be fun.
So, yeah, I look forward to that. Now, I did have an idea for our retreats. I just sort of wonder what you think about this. I was chatting with a few priests about this. So we currently have our big annual encounter experience at the Damascus retreat for all of the students, which is great. We also have our monthly adoration night, and then we have our small group formation we're working on, where they can have a weekly sort of check-in opportunity. So then I was like, well, if we were to offer another sort of retreat option, what would that be? And in my mind, something that would be very different than the Kairos or Damascus experience is a much more kind of contemplative, almost like silent retreat. So hear me out here. What if we were to offer an option for students for their retreat for the year, where they could do a 3-day silent retreat? So same time frame as the Damascus. You'd leave on a Wednesday morning and come back Friday evening. But it'd probably just be someplace local, maybe in DeWitt or another retreat center like that. And the whole retreat would just be, you would have silence throughout the whole day. You'd have maybe like on Wednesday, one talk or session, and then a few meals, and you have time for prayer, Eucharistic adoration. And then probably after dinner, I was thinking we would open that time up for like just hanging out, playing games, so you can talk during that part. But then you go to bed eventually. Then the next day, again, you're in silence all day up until after dinner, and you'll have Mass, a couple of sessions, adoration throughout the day, and then games in the evening, and then go to bed. Then Friday, again, silence for the whole morning, and sort of wrap up the retreat, and then you'd probably be done in the afternoon.
So that sounds amazing. And now that you mention it, Ben Pohl's going to kill me because I forgot it before. But we used to have a retreat like that.
Really?
Yeah. So once the seniors would graduate, Ben and I would take them up to Paradise in the Upper Peninsula at this St. Kateri Tekakwitha retreat center, and it was a silent retreat. And what was cool about doing it at that location is that their facility is just mile after mile of trails, and so you could go be silent and walk through nature and just go be by yourself on these trails the whole day. And the students who went on it just loved it. Now, because of the time of year we did it, it was always limited on who could go.
Yeah.
But I love the idea of a silent retreat. That's I definitely think we have some students, more introverted who would tend to that as well.
Well, especially because now the plan is to be taking our students to Damascus every year. Now, there are 2 retreats they're experiencing. The underclassmen one is different from the upperclassmen, but still, like, the overall kind of vibe is fairly similar. So I think there would be maybe quite a few students who, after a couple of years of Damascus, would be ready to try kind of something very different.
Right, something to more focused and go deep, and that sounds very cool.
Yeah, and I hadn't thought of doing it up at the retreat center in Paradise. So we do the UP mission trip every summer, so I'm very familiar with it from doing the mission trip. But that's not really a retreat. We're like doing service work and going to see Tacoma Falls and all that stuff. But actually going on there for a retreat, now that is an idea. And if we did it in the fall, everyone up there says fall is the best time to visit.
Right, because the bugs are gone.
Yeah, we're there in June for the mission trip, and it's like an experience.
Yeah.
Mr. Breeze calls it the make your kid not a weenie anymore trip. Because you have to wear bug nets on your head and bug spray, and it's really hot some days, and it's fun. Some of the guys love it, but you definitely have to be up for kind of roughing it a bit. But if we went in the fall, the bugs wouldn't be an issue. The weather, I'm sure, would be great. And then it's very suitable for a silent retreat because you don't even have cell service. There's no electricity. You could pretty easily enter into the silence just by being there and unplugging. So that's kind of my latest thought about maybe options for next year. We'll do some kind of silent retreat. We'll see. But for people who listen to the podcast, you get the inside scoop.
That's right, ahead of time. And then paid subscribers will know for sure before everyone else, I'm sure.
We haven't got to that level yet. What if we had a paywall and special content? I don't know. This is getting a little too fancy for the Lansing Catholic podcast, Dan. Maybe if you became a producer, you could help facilitate some of these things. We're still looking for a good producer,
The nice thing about it being free is you don't feel the pressure to actually, make something too good. So
what are you trying to say, Dan?
I can't say much. I've only listened to a few podcasts.
Well, you're now officially part of the free content. So
right, that's right.
Well, thank you so much for being just a faithful part of the team here at Lansing Catholic for so many years, and it certainly is a blessing to me to know that our theology teachers are very faithful, and I don't ever have any concerns about what's being talked about in the classroom with you guys because you're just doing a great job and very well formed. So. Thanks for that.
I'm just grateful Jesus has allowed me to be here this long. So, so awesome. Such a great place to be.
And thanks for all your help for all the retreats over the years as well, because you've certainly been very generous with your time. It's hard to be teaching for a full week and then on top of that, go help on this retreat over the weekend.
Well, that's the great thing about not getting paid extra is I don't feel like it has to be great content there either. So.
All right, folks. Well, thanks for listening, and be sure to tune in for all the latest here at Lansing Catholic. I'm Father Joe.
And I'm Dan Spitzley.
And we'll see you next time.